Recording in progress.
Hi, folks. We'll get started in just under a minute, I think. Just give a bit more time for other people to join. Okay, that'll do, 7 o'clock. Okay, so just a moment while I organise myself. Right. Oh, it's wonky. All right then. Okay, so evening all. Happy Wednesday. Is it Wednesday? It is Wednesday. Okay, so today we're doing an SQL Masterclass, which means we're going to actually talk through and do some actual SQL coding. I'm going to code it live and talk about it as I do it. So you need to be watching this on a laptop or desktop PC. If you're using a mobile device, you're not really be able to see what it is I'm typing. So I said that in the kind of intro stuff and information, so that shouldn't be news, but yeah, if you're on a small device, you're not really going to get the full benefit. So this session does kind of assume some prior knowledge of SQL. It's sort of intermediate SQL that we're talking about today. So I'm not going to go into the basics. So if you are a beginner with SQL, and some of it might not make a lot of sense, but that said, of course, you're still welcome, and I'd encourage you to stick around and you'll pick up some good knowledge anyway. So I'm splitting this up into two sections, CTEs and window functions. So I put out a question on LinkedIn about 2 weeks ago, and I said, if I did a live technical masterclass, what do people want me to talk about? And CTEs and window functions were right at the top of that list. So it's CTEs first and then window functions after, and then I'm going to be clever, and I'm try to be clever, and I'll kind of combine them into a sort of a challenge where I'll put them all together. So if you have any ideas about other subjects you'd like me to cover in the future with a similar session, by all means, let me know. And assuming tonight's session is a success, easy for me to say, I'll try and do that. So this is my first one of these technical masterclass sessions. So I'm as curious as you are as to how it all goes. So, well, what I'll do if we have time is set up a challenge. Oh, I've said that, to bring those together. I've no idea how long this is going to take. I'm thinking maybe 30 or 40 minutes, but it depends on how many questions you ask me, I guess. So I'll ask you to type any questions into the Q&A box, and I'll deal with those as and when. I may unmute you if you have a question that will be better off spoken out loud. Please don't raise your hand, because I never see the raised hands until it's too late, and people just think I'm being rude and ignoring them. It's going to be a very informal affair, so we'll pretty much play it by ear. And I am recording this, so I'll stick it on YouTube either later tonight or tomorrow. So I'd appreciate if you go on there, give it a like if you enjoyed the session. Final point is this: I'm going to be working on Microsoft SQL Server and on a training database that I've created especially for this session. I have all your email addresses, so I'll send you an SQL file so you can run that code and build a database on your own machine, have a play in your own time. That is a T-SQL, SQL Server Management Studio SQL file, so it might need tweaking to work on MySQL or whatever. So I'll do that either later today or tomorrow. Okay, so finally, before we get started, just a tiny little bit about me. I'm not going to bang on about who I am, but a bit of an intro. I'm Nick Holt, founder and director of the BI School, and BI stands for Business Intelligence. I've been working with SQL for around about 20 years, and in the early part of 2022, I set up the BI School with the sole intention of helping people learn SQL, transition their careers into data. Some people I help are already working in a data-related role and they're trying to upgrade, and some are in non-technical roles and are trying to transition into a data career. So over the last 12 months, I've helped several people progress from their existing careers or no careers at all into well-paid jobs that are using SQL on a daily basis. And this is generally through my coaching and mentoring program, which I'll mention later, but that's not what this is all about. And I'm delighted to see that several of my students, for want of a better word, are joining us tonight. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 4 of you. So thanks, guys, for coming on. I really appreciate the support, and yeah, glad that this is of interest to you. So I have said there that my vision is to create a simple and effective means for people to learn SQL to enhance their career. SQL has been awesome for me in my career, and I want to share that about this room for everyone. And there I've said that learning SQL can and should be simple and fun, which is absolutely true. I love SQL, and I hope that some of my enthusiasm shows through for you today. Okay, everyone happy? Then let's just dive right in. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch over to SSMS, SQL Server Management Studio. So just bear with me whilst I organize myself so I can go. I'll pull up Management Studio, just check what else showing. Yes, good, right. So first on the list is CTEs. So let me just get that off there. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you a query. Okay, now this query runs from a database on here, which is that one. So I've done that wrong. I'm going to click that and then click new query. Okay, so what you've got here is a bit of a query. It doesn't matter what it's doing. Okay, the point of this here is that it's a messy query. It's got a derived table as your sort of starting point. I'll just run that first. I'll make that a bit bigger so you can see what it is. Okay, you don't need to understand what all these parts of the query are doing. The point is that when you look at it, you think, ugh, that's horrible. If you were given the task of trying to figure that out and fix that query, fix that report, you'd be like, Christ almighty, that's horrendous. It's got derived tables and subqueries, and it's got all this crap here, and you'd be looking at that and thinking, cheese and biscuits, I don't want to deal with all that. So it's a big, long, messy query that looks like someone has just splurged out all that SQL code onto the screen. Okay, so CTEs exist to tidy up your code. Okay, that's the main reason you'd use them. Okay, so looking at this query, like I said, you don't need to know the database, you don't need to know or understand the data or the tables, but whether you're new to SQL or experienced with SQL, you can see that this is a fairly complex piece of SQL code. And in real terms, that's all you need to understand. So I'll just talk you through it. Okay, I'm looking to the side because I'm on that screen there. So I'll tell you what, I'll move that a little bit better. Let's try and maintain a bit of eye contact. So, okay, what we've got here is it's an HR database. Okay, this is a database I use in my training, but it's kind of a shortened version. So here's a query that gets employees who've started or left within the last 180 days. So the start date is in the last 180 days, or the end date is in the last 180 days. And that's combined with a union to get how many? 12 rows of data. Okay, so that's where our query starts. This next bit gets all our address fields, address line 1, 2, 3, 4, and postcode, and just concatenates them into one field. So that in itself is a bit of a messy bit of code, because we're saying, well, if the field is null, then output just an empty string, and if there's a value in there, then we want a comma and then that field. So it's to get that looking nice, takes a bit of a lengthy case statement. Okay, so we've got that to deal with. There's this thing here that gets marital status. Now, marital status is in a table that has person ID, marital status, and effective date. So that's a start date. It doesn't have an end date. So to figure out someone's current marital status, you have to get creative with a subquery, derived table, and do it like that. And like I say, you don't need to understand what that's doing, but the point is it's a messy query. And at the end, you've got this subquery to get employees that started in 2023. Now, this is not the most efficient way to end up with that result of those 10 records. My whole intention here was to create a query that looks a bit of a mess. So what we do is we use CTEs to tidy this up and take the complexity out of the main query and just make it a bit more manageable and readable. So how we do that is like this. So we'll take this for starters. So this is a query which unions two queries together. This is the one that says if you've started in the last 180 days or ended in the last 180 days, we'll put you together into one little query and we'll get those 12 records. So what we're going to do, we're going to cut that, Control X, take it out of there and put it into a CTE. So CTE starts with the word with, and then we'll give it a name. So I'm going to call it CTE employees. Now you can call it what you like. Okay, I always start mine with the CTE underscore and then some sort of a descriptive name, as, and then open a bracket and then just paste that bit of code. Okay, so what I've done there is I've created a CTE. Now what a CTE, it's like, it behaves like a database table. So I'm just going to demonstrate this by saying select star from CTE employees. So I've created a CTE and now I'm going to select from it. And what it does, it just acts as if there's one table on the database with those 12 rows of data in it. Okay, now it doesn't exist on the database. That doesn't save the data anywhere. Every time I run that, it runs that query to extract that data. Now here we're talking about 12 rows of data out of, I think there's maybe 100 employees in that table. So it's lightning fast. And CTEs don't really generally exist to improve performance, although apparently they can do. It's just to make your query more readable. So now we're going to take that reference to that CTE out of there. We're going to put it here. So where previously we had that, whatever, 8 or 10 lines of code, now we've just got the reference to the table. And we run it, F5, and it does the same thing as what it did before. Okay. So let's have a look. If you have any questions at any point, bang them in that question and answer box, the Q&A, and I'll get to them as and when. Okay, so what we got? We've got our first query taken out of the main query and put into that CTE. The next one is this addresses thing. So we've got whatever, 8 lines of code to produce these addresses. So we'll cut that and we'll create another CTE. So we do a comma and then I say CTE. I'm going to call this one addresses. And I'm going to call it that because it contains addresses. See, losing the name. So now I've done that. I've created another CTE called addresses, and I'll take that name and I'll just put it there where that previous query was. Okay, so now it's looking a lot simpler. And I'll do the same with this thing for marital status. So on its own, it produces a list of person IDs and statuses. And I'll take it out of there and I'll put it in here. I'll call it CTE marital. As with an S, and just paste it in there. So now that marital status CTE, I'll just do that. There you go. And it's just joining onto it just as if it was a database table. So from the point of view of that query, it behaves exactly the same as it was just a normal table. Now, the thing is, when it runs this, it loops through our CTE employees. Let me just do this. Down there. So we've got in there, we've got 12 records. So when it runs this addresses thing, it actually runs this query 12 times, once for every row in the previous table. Okay, so it doesn't save the data anywhere. That's a kind of a key thing there. And then what can we do with this? Do we want to do that as a CTE? Well, why not, hey? So we could, for this one, so what we've said is select start date from employees where the start date is in this calendar year. So if we take that out and put it in there, CTE 2023 as just does that. Now, oops. Now we could just, what we can do with that, because all that is a list of start dates, we could actually join on that, couldn't we? Just do an inner join, CT23, like C2 on C2 dot start date equals E dot start date. So now what we're left with, I'll just run it to make sure it works. Okay, it's the same result as what we had when we started. But look at that compared to the query that we had at first. Okay, now our final query is just that, 5 lines of code. It's easy to understand. You say, look at employees. Okay, well, that's a CTE. It's this one here. And if there's something wrong with it, you can isolate it and troubleshoot it and run it on its own. Same with addresses. If your address fields don't look quite right, I mean, that one there, we've got a space, got 2 commas in a row. So that's not right. So clearly that address thing needs tweaking, because that doesn't look right. You wouldn't have 2 commas together in an address field. So what you can do is you can isolate that, run it, find the bit where you've made a mistake and fix it without having to run the whole query, because sometimes a query can take a long time to run, whereas it can run just a little bit on its own and it's much quicker. Okay, so that is CTEs. And they exist solely to tidy up your code, to make it easier to read, easier to manage, easier to troubleshoot. And we may have a question. So let's have a look. So we've got, does this change performance or is it mainly to read better? Well, I made a statement on LinkedIn a few days ago that CTEs don't improve performance. And then I was shot down by none other than Brent Ozar, who, in the world of SQL, he's a rock star. It's like making a comment about songwriting and, I don't know, David Bowie comes along and tells me I'm wrong. So I'm quite happy to be told I'm wrong by Brent Ozar. But he said you can use CTEs to improve performance. I've never seen it personally, but apparently it's possible. But really, it's just to tidy up your code, make it read better. And Matthew says, could this query be done using temp tables rather than CTEs? Yes, absolutely they can. So temp tables have more functionality, but essentially they can be used to achieve the same goal than your CTEs. So I'm going to quickly just run through this. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just repeat that. I'm going to find the thing where I saved myself. Is it that one? Yes. So to convert these to temp tables, okay, so let's just do that. So what a temp table is, now a temp table is different. So I'm going to say what this bit of code I've just written there does, it says if this temp table exists, then drop it. And then I'm going to go select into emp. So let's just move this out of the way. Okay, so when I run this, it's going to create a temporary table. Now, a temporary table is called temporary because as soon as I shut this down with pressing the X, it vanishes. So I click that and it says 12 rows affected. So now start from emps, and that is a temp table. Now that temp table exists. So if you go here, system databases, tempdb, can you see this? Temporary tables, it's there. Now that data lives on the server. Okay, now I'm dealing with 12 rows here, so it's not going to make any difference. But if you're dealing with 12 million rows, that's going to help performance. Okay. And there's other things you can do with temp tables that you can't do with CTEs. I'll touch on those in a minute. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to convert, I tell you what, I'll not convert the whole thing to use temp tables, but the principle is the same. So you would create a temporary table for each of those, and then they would exist in this on the tempdb database, which is a system database on the server, and you can just do the same thing and do select from your temp table in each of those. Now, what you can do with temp tables that you can't do with CTEs, number one, you can add columns. You can amend the structure of that temp table. So in step one, you could build a temp table. In step two, you could add another column onto that temp table. You alter table, add a column. Okay. You can insert data, delete data, update data in that temp table. Okay, can't do that with CTEs. And the other thing you can do, which is massive, is you can add a thing called an index. So an index in SQL Server, I'm not going to get into this because it's a proper deep subject, but an index in SQL Server is it's like an index in a book. It's a way to get to that data quicker. So you can apply an index to a temporary table. A little anecdote, I was given something to work on, was it last summer or the summer before, a big query that used CTEs, and it was taking hours and hours to run. Literally, it had to be run as an overnight process. It was taking upwards of 22, 23 hours to run. It used CTEs. I switched all those CTEs to temp tables, and it ran in 15 seconds. So that's the difference it can make. So that's a long-winded way of answering Matthew's question and saying, yes, it can be done in temp tables, and there are potentially massive performance benefits. Okay, so that is CTEs. Now then, just want to say this quick thing. If you need specific help with this or any other aspect of SQL, one thing you can do is to book a tech support session with me. So I normally charge about £60 an hour for that. We can go through anything you like, but on the back of this event, I'm doing that for half price for attendees of this session. So if you have something that you're struggling with, you want to just have a one-to-one with me, I can do that. Or if you're working on something specific that is causing you a problem, we can do that. So that's £30 an hour, and we can. That's one of the things that I do. Okay, or have a full SQL teaching coaching program, which again I'll tell you about later. So, any more questions or comments about CTEs? Let's have a look. Let's see what people are saying. Nothing. Okay. So, well, if you do think of anything, you stick them in the window. Thanks, Nick Holt, and I'll come back to it. Okay, so that is CTEs. 23 minutes in. Okay, right. So the next thing I want to talk about is window functions. Now then, window functions are, there's no two ways of saying this. They are super cool and powerful. So let's find my little bit of script here. Where is it? Right. So what do window functions do? Well, we'll start by doing this. So this is a bit of code which creates a temporary, no, it doesn't, it creates a permanent table in my database. So I run that and I've got a list of order IDs, order dates, customer names, towns in the north of England, if that's of interest to you, and order amounts. Okay. So let's have a look at the sort of thing we can do with window functions. So that's just a query from our table. So let's just draw a line under that. In fact, what I'll do is I'll comment out. Okay, see, and what we'll do is this. Okay, so rather than me try to explain it, it's probably best if we just leap right in and I will demonstrate it because it will make more sense. So first one I'm going to show you is a thing called rank. Now, all window functions are pink for some reason, and they have open and close brackets. Okay, so we're going to say rank, and we go over. This sense as I start to code it out. So I fully admit I have a little cheat sheet here to make sure I don't forget anything. So I'm going to say over. Order by order date. In fact, what I'll do is I'll do order by order date there too. Order by order date. That's rank. Here's where you get to see how bad a typist I am. Okay, so I'm going to run that and it's going to give us a result. And this is the result, this column. So it's rank, okay? So it gives everything a rank. So the oldest order, because I've ordered by order date, so the oldest date is given ID 1, or rank number 1, then 2, and the newest one is 12. Okay. Now then, because 1, 2, 3, and then those two there have the same order date, 5th of April 2022. If anybody's watching this from America, we do our dates properly over here. So it's year, month, day. So that is 5th of April. Okay. So they both have a rank of 4 because it's the same date. But then the next one is ranked 6. So it's a bit like, if you think about it, a bit like a running race. Okay. If you get two competitors who have the exact same time, they might both have the rank of 4, but the next fella to come in, or lady, will have 6 because that person's the 6th person to cross the line. Makes perfect sense, but it's not always what you want. So you've got those ranks, but where you've got ties, it gives the same number, then you've got a gap. Okay, so I'll be honest with you, I almost never use D rank just to save typing order date. So when we run this, got another new column next to it. Now then, this is the same but different. So it's the same, The oldest one has 1, then 2, then 3, and then those two have 4 again. But can you see what's different? The next one has 5. So there's no gaps. Now that is a critical difference. When we come to do our little challenge at the end, we'll see why that's important. Okay. So there's another one there that's got the same date. So they are 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that one goes up to 10 because there are 10 different dates. That goes up to 12 because there are 12 rows in that data set. Okay, so that is dense rank. That's the one of the window functions I use the most. Next one is row number, which row number, which gives a row number, pretty much, obviously, really. All over, we're going to say the same order by order date. Order. So what this does, it just gives you a row number. So where you've got a dates that are the same, it doesn't care. However, you've ordered it. We ordered it by order date. So SQL Server decided which of those it wanted to show first. It's gone Michael and then David. But if we said order date, comma, customer name, then it's got an actual order. So, but it's still one number per row. You never get a duplicate number in there. So row number can be useful. Maybe if you do create a temp table, you want to put a row number in that data. A row number function is the way to do it. The fourth one of the sort of, there's a classic 4 and an extra 2. Okay, so the fourth one of the classic 4 is this. And it's one of those things that's almost never any use whatsoever. But when it is a lifesaver. So we do untile over. Let's just copy it. Goodness sake, save yourself a bit of bother. As entile for num. So what entile does, it requires a number in there, and it will split your data into a number of sections. So if I say 3, it will split my data into 3 groups. So it's got the 1s, the 2s, and the 3s, just 3 equal numbers. So entile it's short for percentile. So sometimes if you're doing like averages or analysis of data, you might want to split that data into just a small section and analyze that data and then treat that section as a sort of random sample of the full data set. So that's when that can be useful. So let's say you only need to test 4 cases out of the 12, then you could do this entile. So I think I've used that twice in a 20-year career, but like I say, was one of those things that's really useful when you need it. Rest of the time it isn't. Okay, so those are the classic 4, just with order by. Now I'm going to just move those out so it looks a bit clearer. Okay, so you can add to these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that, copy it, comment it, put it down here. So let's take, which one am I going to take? I'm going to take dense rank. Okay, go get rid of that. So, okay, so we've already seen dense rank in action, and it gives us a rank from 1 to 10. But what if we want that rank to be, let's say, per town? So in that town, we've got Manchester several times, we've got Accrington 3 times, Salford and Rochdale. Let's say we want to do it by town. So what we could do is this. Let's say dense rank over partition by town. And then you could do order by order date as town ranked. Now, what's going to happen is this. Because we've partitioned by town, every time the town changes, then the rank number resets. So in Accrington, you goes 1, 2. Now those are both 2 because those dates are the same. Then in Manchester, so it starts again 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the town changes to Rochdale, so it starts again 1, 2. And then Salford 1, 2, 3. So for every town, you've got its own isolated rank. Okay, does that make sense? If this stops making sense, or you're like, your head's about to explode, pop a comment on and tell me to just slow down or shut up. Okay, so this is where dense rank becomes a bit more powerful, because you can do this partition by, which is kind of like grouping the data. Okay, so that's partition by, and then so you could partition by anything. So you've got a few people here with the same surname, so you could split that name up and partition by surname. You could partition by date or anything. Okay. So when we come to our little challenge at the end, I'll show you that. So that's partition by. Okay. The next one I want to show you, and what I'll do is I'll include this script when I email you with the script afterwards. I'll include this thing for you. Copy that, comment it out. So there's another useful ranking function, and it's this: sum over partition by. So what this is, you can take sum of order amounts, and we can go over partition by town as town total. So what's this done is this. Okay, because we partition by town, each of these town totals columns, what we just created, is split by town. And it said it's done the sum of order amounts partitioned by town. So 20,000 plus 15,000 plus 2,000 is 37,000. So that 37,000 is the total of all the order amounts for Accrington. Yeah. That 50,500 for Manchester is the total of all those totals for Manchester. Yeah, same with Rochdale, same with Salford. Don't know why I put Rochdale in there. Anyway, I did. So that can be really useful. Now, have a think, what might you want to use that for? Well, you could maybe do that to say, what's the average? So, no, not the average. What's that percent maybe? What's that number as a percentage of the Accrington total? So there you could say order amount, which is that column there, as a percentage of the town total. So then you go divide by, and then that whole expression, I'm going to copy that and put it there as town total percent. So now I need to multiply by 100. I do. So let's put a bracket around that. Times 100. So now we can see that David Jones has 54% of the total for Accrington. Yeah. Andrew Smith has 40% of the total for Accrington, and David Brown has the remaining 5% of the total for Accrington. So can you see, from an analysis point of view, this could be really useful. So what you would have to do without this function, you'd have to have a subquery or a CTE and do those totals, and then sort of join that onto the orders table. And it gets messy and it's untidy. But that sum over is what it's called. So sum over partition means that you can do that in rows in one table without having to faff and fanny around with all that subquerying or CTEs. Pretty good, eh? Yeah, I like it. I can tell from your silence that you love it too. Right, then the last two, okay, are lag and lead. Now, these are, if you thought they were cool, and you were right, these are super cool. So, let me just see what we're doing here. So, let's say we want to know how long it is between each order date. So that was on the 3rd of April 2022. This was on the 10th of April 2022. I want to return the number of days between that row and that row, and then the number of days between that row and that row. How am I going to do that? The only way I can think of doing that is by joining orders onto itself, but then I'd have to maybe put it in a CTE and apply a row number and then do row number match off. It's just so much coding and so much messiness. There must be a better way. Ta-da! Of course, there's a better way. Lag and lead. So we do it like this. Lag. Okay. Order date, because that's the field that we are assessing. 1, because that's the number of rows we want to traverse, and I'll show you what that means in a minute. Over order by order date as lag 1 O date. Now there's something wrong there because it's put a wiggly line. What have I missed? Lag order, close brackets, over order by order date. Just run it and see what happens. Syntax error near order date. Right, come on, help me out here. What have I done wrong? Lag order. Oh, I've not put a comma in it. Stupid boy. Right, there we go. So what this does, let's order by order date. So it gets that date and it puts it there. Yeah, and it gets that date and puts it there. So now to say how long is it between that date and that date, or that date and that date, how easy is this? Date diff in days between order date and that whole expression, which returns that date as days between. Okay, so -2. So I've done it the wrong way around. So let's take that order date out and put it there. So from the 1st of April to the 3rd of April, 2 days. From the 4th to the 5th, 1 day. From the 5th to the 5th, 0 days. How awesome is that? That is so good. That just saves you so much coding. Brilliant, isn't it? Now, so if lag looks at 1 day, sorry, 1 row behind, lead, I'm going to copy that, change its name to lead and change that to lead. It just does the opposite. So now it's getting, let's comment that out so we're not confusing ourselves. So it's getting that date and putting it there. So it's putting it, moving 1 day in the other direction. And the reason we're doing it 1 is because of this 1 here. We change that to 2. Now suddenly it gets that date and puts it there. It gets that date and puts it there. So 2 rows apart. Lag and lead. Really, really special, really powerful. Awesome indeed. Missing it. Matthew spotted my missing comma before I did. Thank you for that. Too late now, isn't it? So so I'm just reading the comment here. Some showing once per town, not on anything. Not sure what you mean there. Anyway, yes, my missing comma had been spotted, so thanks for that. Yeah, so lag and lead, really, really powerful stuff. And that is window functions. So it's those 6 functions of rank, dense rank, row number, and end tile. Then you can add to that by doing partition by, and then you've also got this sum over partition by, and then you've got these 2 little heroes here, lag and lead. So did all that make sense? Give us a yes or a no or a not so sure in the chat. does lag and lead only with index? No, lag and lead works with everything. So you could just do it with order amount. You could do it with name. So with lag and lead, let's get rid of that as well. So I could say lag customer name, comma 1 over, let's say, order by date. So now what you're going to say is, the question might be, okay, so that's our first order. Who put in our next order? And the answer is, has it gone? Or previous order. So David Jones, the previous one was David Smith. John Smith, previous one was David Jones. So yeah, you can do lag and lead with any type of field. Welcome. Yeah, these are great. So I said we'd have a bit of a challenge. Okay, so the challenge is, it's this. So right, so we're going to go back to our HR data that we looked at earlier, the SQL Masterclass. So this is the challenge, okay. So to show employees in their current or previous jobs, okay. So this is a kind of real world application for this sort of thing. Now I use dense rank a lot, and this is exactly the sort of thing I use it for. So I'm going to quickly do this query, because I know this data, so I can just rattle this up dead quickly. So from job history, called JH, join jobs J on JH dot job ID equals J dot job ID. Okay, so in that's a job history table. Let's do an order by 1. No, not all, 1, 2. So doing order by 1 and 2, order by 1 means it's going to order it by that column. Order by 2 means it orders it by that column. And that's what I want it to do. Okay, so let's have a look. So our person ID, let me very briefly explain this data. So those are our employees. Every employee has a unique person ID. And then in this job history table, if a person has changed their job, they'll get a new record in this table. So order by 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's look at an example. This person here, so where is it? Person ID 8. So these 3 rows have all got the person ID 8. So that's the same person. And this person has started as a cashier, and then she got a new job on that date. That was the start and end. Oh, so I started off as shelf stacker till that date. Then there was a warehouse operative till that date, and then a cashier. Okay, so every time a person changes their job, they get a new row in this job history table. So an end date on the old job and a start date on the new job. So that's how you track people's job changes. Our challenge here is to list everyone, list our employees, show their current job, and then show their previous job if they have one. Okay, so this is what I would do with this. Let's just get rid of that for now. I would say job history. Okay, the fields I want are jh.person ID, jh.start date, jh.end date, and then j.job. So that is everyone's job. So this person here, this ID 8, oh, it's not in order. Right, let's change that. Change my order by 1 and 2. Okay. So this person ID 8 has got those 3 rows because in her time at the company, it's a supermarket, by the way, she's had 3 jobs. Okay, does that make sense? Good. So we use dense rank. Dense rank over. So what we're partitioning by? Anybody? I'll give you 10 seconds to stick an answer in the Q&A or the chat box. What we're partitioning by. We want that rank to restart for every what? Anybody? Person ID. Well done, Shashank. Correct. Person ID. In fact, I'll even copy it out of the chat box. Partition by person ID. And then we're ordering it by start date. JH start date. Now, if I do that, we'll call it as rank number. So what that gives us is a ranking field. So this guy here, person ID 10003, has had 2 jobs. Okay. So now if you look, the job with rank number 1 is actually the oldest job. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to put a descending there, desk. So now the most recent job is number 1. So here, so that's, hasn't got an end date, so that's his current job. The one with a 1 is the most recent or current one. This one here, who had those 3 jobs, number 1 is the most recent job. Okay, therefore number 2 is the next most recent job, the previous job. Okay, this person here, 15, has had 2 jobs. 1 is the current job, 2 is the previous job. Okay, does that make sense? And anyone who's never changed job only has 1, and it's got a 1. So what I'll do now is I'll create a CTE for that data with CTE job hist as, and in brackets, indent it so it looks a bit neater. And then we'll go select staff from employees. Okay, so it's just our employees. Let's just get e.person ID, e.forename, e.surname, and just put them on different rows so it looks a little bit neater. And then I'm going to join that table to my CTE. So I'm going to do inner join. I'll do a left join because, no, actually, I'll do an inner join because everybody should have at least 1 job. Call that JH. No, I want to call it job H. On job H dot person ID equals E dot person ID. So now we're joining our CTE back onto our employees table. What did I call it? Job H dot start. So when we look at this, what do we see? We see people having multiple lines because we've got 3 jobs showing. So now we want to say is and job H dot rank number equals 1. So it's only going to show us the current or most recent job. So now this person who had 3 jobs, it was her, Leanne, and Malcolm had 2, just shows the current job. So I'm going to say job H dot job title as current job. But now I can do a left join onto that same CTE. I'm going to call it previous job on prev dot person ID equals E dot person ID. And this is the clever bit, previous dot rank number equals what? Anybody? Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ha! Shagshanks. Hey, you're on the ball tonight, mate. You really are. So 2. So by showing number 2, rev dot job title as previous job. So most of these people have only ever had 1 job, but Malcolm was deputy manager. Before that, he was customer service team leader. Leanne is a cashier. Before that, she was a warehouse operative. And George Twaddle, stupid name, he used to be a security operative. Now he's team leader. Good for you, George. So there you go. So that's a real life example of when you might use something like dense rank. And you can see that having the dense rank as opposed to the rank is quite useful because then you know gaps. So you could do another one and have a 3 for the job before that one. Okay, so that's the sort of thing that I would use dense rank for. And it's a good example of a CTE because the alternative to that is we'd have to join that there if we did a subquery and join it again. With this, we only need to define that once, don't we? Okay, so there you go. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to nip quickly back into the slideshow from current slide. Okay, and I'm going to do this. Bear with whilst I just sort myself out. Put that over there. Okay, so right, so that's the technical element of tonight's session. I just want to finish by talking very briefly about ways I can support you if you need more help than this. As I mentioned earlier, I offer these technical sessions for £60 an hour, where we can look at any aspect of SQL you need help with, a specific project or coding challenge you might have, pretty much anything you might need help with related to SQL. But as I mentioned earlier, I'm doing that for attendees of this session. That's you, lucky 18 people, for half price. Okay. I also run a full training and coaching program which covers the whole of SQL from bottom to top, and that's aimed at anyone who has either no SQL knowledge at all or a little bit, or people just need to skill up to a more advanced level. So this is ideally a 15 to 20 week program, although there's people on the call tonight who signed up some time ago and haven't finished yet, so naming no names, but you know who you are. So yeah, there's a big emphasis, like I said, 15 to 20 not minutes, 15 to 20 week program to teach everything I know. Plus there's a big emphasis on problem solving. That's dealing with challenges like the one we just worked through. And this thing is called the SQL Superhero Program. And I focus heavily on problem solving, which is what you don't get with online courses. It's all about presenting you with and preparing you for the sort of challenges you'll face in a job dealing with SQL. Then we'll look at technical interview preparation. So when you finally get the interview, you don't want to be that guy who goes in there unprepared and blows it in the interview. I'll show you how to progress, how to impress interviewers with your technical knowledge and ability, and the ability to problem solve, take on new challenges and do it all with confidence. I have sat in literally hundreds of interviews over the years, and it's frustrating watching smart, capable people make themselves unemployable through a lack of preparation. So I know what interviews are looking for, and I can coach you on how to deliver that. And the cost of that is £800 GBP currently. Now that might seem a lot, but I've had people who booked those technical sessions and then booked another, and in the end would have been better off signing up for the full program. And just think how much it could be worth to you to have advanced SQL knowledge, how much more you could earn. It damn sight more than £800. So a bit of a bargain, really. But if you only want help with one or two aspects of SQL, then those single sessions have been very valuable to a lot of people. So here's what you want to do. If you want to advance your learning, you can use that QR code to book one of those 1 hour technical sessions for a discounted rate of £30. There's no obligation in booking a call. Payment won't be taken until maybe a day before or perhaps on the session itself. And on that call, we can discuss the full program if you're interested, and if that might be a better option, but there's no obligation and there's no pushy sales talk from me. This is all about helping people get better at SQL. So if you get your phone out and hover the camera over that code, you'll be able to book a date and time for a call. As I said, this call you're about to book is on Zoom. There's no payment taken at this stage. It's just to reserve the session, and you can always cancel and change your mind. So if you want to book that, get that booked, and we can chat, and we can do more of this sort of thing. And you can ask any questions and make sure it's the right option for you. Okay, now let's see if there are any more questions in the Q&A. Nothing in chat. Nothing in Q&A. Okay, so before we go, any more questions about CTEs, window functions, or anything else? Give you a few seconds to do that. Oops, how has it gone? Ah. Yeah, so that's the end of the session. So thank you for attending. I really hope you found that useful. So yeah, so please do connect with me on social media. I do a lot of stuff on LinkedIn. I've also got YouTube and what's that thing with the pictures? Instagram. I don't really use it very much. So yeah, thank you for joining. It's been an absolute pleasure. It came in at just under an hour, which is absolutely bob on. So thank you very much and see you soon. I look forward to speaking on those calls. So goodbye. And yeah, that's it from me. Bye-bye.